Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the English Speaking Nerds channel. We are absolutely thrilled to have you here with us today. I'm your lovely host, Maya.
And I'm John. This is the place where we don't just teach you textbook English, we dive deep into the real stuff. The idioms, the culture, the nuance, and the way people actually speak when they aren't reading from a script.
Exactly. If you love learning English that connects you to the world, please support us by hitting that like button and subscribing to English Speaking Nerds right now. It helps us keep the lights on and the coffee brewing, which, as you know, is absolutely essential for our deep conversations.
It really is. And speaking of essential things, today we're tackling something that affects almost everyone with a job. We're talking about work and stress.
Talking about work and stress. Now, this might sound simple, right? Everyone works, everyone feels stressed sometimes, but when you actually try to discuss work stress in English, especially with colleagues or friends, you realize it's packed with emotion, boundaries, and careful language choices.
It absolutely is. Because talking about work stress isn't just about saying, I'm busy or I'm tired. It's about expressing how you feel while maintaining professionalism, setting boundaries without seeming lazy, and connecting with others without complaining too much.
And stick around until the end because we're going to talk about something really important: how to discuss work stress without burning bridges or damaging your professional reputation. It's going to be a meaningful one today.
So let's dive in. Maya, when someone asks you, how's work, what's your first thought?
Oh, that's interesting. My first thought is actually, how honest should I be? Because how's work sounds like a simple question, but it's actually really complex. Do they want a real answer or just small talk? Will I sound negative if I'm honest? Should I just say fine and move on?
That hesitation, yes. This is exactly what I call workplace honesty navigation. When work stress comes up in conversation, people have to instantly decide how much truth to share.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the English Speaking Nerds channel. We are absolutely thrilled to have you here with us today. I'm your lovely host, Maya.
And I'm John. This is the place where we don't just teach you textbook English, we dive deep into the real stuff. The idioms, the culture, the nuance, and the way people actually speak when they aren't reading from a script.
Exactly. If you love learning English that connects you to the world, please support us by hitting that like button and subscribing to English Speaking Nerds right now. It helps us keep the lights on and the coffee brewing, which, as you know, is absolutely essential for our deep conversations.
It really is. And speaking of essential things, today we're tackling something that affects almost everyone with a job. We're talking about work and stress.
Talking about work and stress. Now, this might sound simple, right? Everyone works, everyone feels stressed sometimes, but when you actually try to discuss work stress in English, especially with colleagues or friends, you realize it's packed with emotion, boundaries, and careful language choices.
It absolutely is. Because talking about work stress isn't just about saying, I'm busy or I'm tired. It's about expressing how you feel while maintaining professionalism, setting boundaries without seeming lazy, and connecting with others without complaining too much.
And stick around until the end because we're going to talk about something really important: how to discuss work stress without burning bridges or damaging your professional reputation. It's going to be a meaningful one today.
So let's dive in. Maya, when someone asks you, how's work, what's your first thought?
Oh, that's interesting. My first thought is actually, how honest should I be? Because how's work sounds like a simple question, but it's actually really complex. Do they want a real answer or just small talk? Will I sound negative if I'm honest? Should I just say fine and move on?
That hesitation, yes. This is exactly what I call workplace honesty navigation. When work stress comes up in conversation, people have to instantly decide how much truth to share.
Workplace honesty navigation. I love that term. Explain it for everyone.
Workplace honesty navigation is when you have to quickly decide how honest to be about your work stress. You balance being genuine with being professional. You want to share your experience without seeming like you're complaining or can't handle your job. It's a social skill that requires constant adjustment.
That's so accurate. And there's this pressure to always seem positive about work, even when you're struggling. We call it professional positivity pressure.
Ooh, explain professional positivity pressure.
Professional positivity pressure is when you feel like you need to present your work life as good, or at least manageable, even when it's actually overwhelming. Your colleagues say, busy but good, and you feel like you should say the same thing, even if you're actually drowning in deadlines and losing sleep.
That is so real. Because in many workplace cultures, especially in America, there's this expectation that you're handling everything well. Admitting stress can feel like admitting weakness.
Exactly. And that's where we get into what I call stress confession anxiety.
Stress confession anxiety. Define that for us.
Stress confession anxiety is when you want to talk about your work stress, but you're worried about how people will react. Will they think you're weak? Will they lose respect for you? Will your boss find out? Will it affect your career? So you keep quiet even though you really need to talk about it.
It's a form of isolation. People are stressed, but everyone's pretending they're fine, which makes everyone feel more alone. And honestly, it's really harmful.
Right. Which brings us to something crucial, the vocabulary itself. You can't just say work is hard. You need words that help you express different types of stress, different levels of intensity, and different needs. We call this stress communication vocabulary.
That's essential. Stress communication vocabulary includes phrases like, I'm swamped, I'm overwhelmed, I'm burned out, I'm hanging in there, I'm stretched thin, I'm underwater. These phrases communicate specific experiences and intensities of stress.
And native speakers use them naturally. But for learners, there's often a gap between feeling stressed and knowing how to express it appropriately in English. It's what I call the stress expression gap.
The stress expression gap. That's powerful. I've seen students who were clearly struggling at work but could only say, I am busy or work is much. It doesn't capture the exhaustion or the emotional weight.
It really doesn't, because work stress is complex and layered, and you need language that reflects those different dimensions, which is why we're doing this episode. We want to give you the tools to talk about work stress like a native speaker.
So let's start by talking about the different types of work stress conversations, because understanding the context helps you choose the right approach.
Absolutely. First, there's what I call casual check-in conversations. These are quick exchanges when someone asks about work in passing.
Casual check-in conversations require brief, balanced responses. You say things like, it's going well, or pretty busy lately, or can't complain, or the usual chaos. You're acknowledging reality without diving deep.
Then there are venting conversations. These happen when you really need to release stress and share your frustration with someone you trust.
Venting conversations require honesty and emotion. You share feelings with phrases like, I'm so frustrated, or I can't deal with this anymore, or my boss is driving me crazy, or I don't know how much longer I can do this. There's real vulnerability here.
What about boundary setting conversations? Those are when you need to communicate that you're overwhelmed and need something to change.
Boundary setting conversations require firm professional language. You might say something like, I need to prioritize my workload, or I can't take on anything else right now, or I need support with this, or this isn't sustainable. You're clear about limits without apologizing.
And then there are solidarity conversations. These are when colleagues bond over shared work stress experiences.
Solidarity conversations require validation and humor. You connect with phrases like, same here, or I totally understand, or we're all drowning, or if I survive this week, it'll be a miracle. There's comfort in knowing you're not alone.
Now, here's where it gets interesting. When you talk about work stress in English, you're not just describing feelings. You're engaging in what I call workplace culture navigation.
Workplace culture navigation. This is important. Explain it.
Workplace culture navigation is when conversations about work stress reflect and reinforce workplace culture. Some workplaces celebrate being busy as a badge of honor. Others encourage balance and boundaries. When you talk about stress, you're participating in this culture, either accepting it or challenging it.
That's the difference between saying, I'm slammed with pride versus saying, I'm slammed with concern. The same words can mean different things depending on the tone and culture.
Exactly. And native speakers understand this context naturally, but for learners, it's something learners need to develop awareness of deliberately.
It really is. And there's another layer to this. When you talk about work stress, you're also revealing your coping skills and resilience. We call this competence signaling.
Competence signaling. That sounds important.
It is. It means that how you describe your work stress signals whether you can handle challenges. If you only complain without showing any coping strategies, people might question your abilities. But if you acknowledge stress while also showing you're managing it, you demonstrate competence.
So when I say it's been intense, but I'm working through my priorities, I'm not just describing stress, I'm showing that I'm capable and proactive.
Exactly, which is why these conversations require careful language. You're balancing honesty with professionalism.
Let's talk about something that affects many people, the fear of appearing weak. Because there's this belief that admitting stress means you can't handle your job.
This is so important. There's a phenomenon I call stress stigma.
Stress stigma. Define it.
Stress stigma is the negative judgment people fear when they admit they're stressed. You worry that colleagues or managers will see you as less capable, less dedicated, or less deserving of opportunities. This fear keeps people silent even when they desperately need help or support.
But here's the thing. Everyone experiences work stress. It's normal and human. The problem is the culture of silence around it.
Exactly. So how do you talk about stress in a way that's honest but doesn't trigger stigma?
I think you start with what I call normalized stress framing. You present stress as a normal part of work, not a personal failing.
Normalized stress framing. Explain that.
Normalized stress framing means you talk about work stress as a common experience that reflects the work itself, not your inability to cope. Instead of saying, I can't handle this, you say, this is a challenging period, or the workload is intense right now. You're describing the situation, not criticizing yourself.
That's powerful, because when you frame stress as situational rather than personal, people are more likely to offer support rather than judgment.
Exactly. And you can use phrases like, we're all feeling it, or it's been a tough quarter for the team, or these deadlines are aggressive, without seeming weak or incapable.
Now let's talk about vocabulary, because having the right words makes these conversations so much easier. What are some basic phrases for talking about being busy at work?
You can start with, I'm swamped, or I'm buried, or I'm slammed, or I've got a lot on my plate. These are casual ways to say you're very busy.
And for describing sustained stress over time?
You can say, I'm burned out, or I'm running on empty, or I'm exhausted, or I'm drained. These words indicate that stress has taken a toll on you physically and emotionally.
What about describing the work itself as stressful?
Try phrases like, the job is demanding, or the pace is intense, or the pressure is high, or the expectations are overwhelming. These describe the work environment rather than your reaction to it.
Now, what about when someone asks, how's work? That's such a common question. How do you answer it?
It really is. And how you answer depends on the context. If it's casual small talk, you can say, good, thanks, or busy but good, or can't complain, or same old, same old.
And if someone's genuinely asking because they care,
You can be more honest. Actually, it's been pretty stressful lately. Or, honestly, I'm feeling overwhelmed. Or, it's tough right now. Or, I'm managing, but it's a lot. That transition from surface answer to honest answer is important. It shows you trust the person enough to be real with them.
Exactly. Now let's talk about something sensitive, how to describe work stress without bad-mouthing your boss or company.
Oh, this is tricky because sometimes your boss or company is the source of stress, but complaining about them can backfire professionally.
Right, so you use what I call diplomatic problem description. You acknowledge issues without attacking people.
Diplomatic problem description for work stress. Walk us through it. Instead of saying, my boss is terrible, you say, my manager and I have different working styles, or communication could be better. Instead of saying, this company doesn't care about employees, you say, the culture here is very demanding, or work-life balance is challenging.
You're describing problems factually without making it personal or accusatory. That's smart and professional.
Exactly. And sometimes you need to say, there are some challenges I'm working through, or not everything is ideal, but I'm figuring it out. These phrases acknowledge difficulty without placing blame.
What about describing specific types of work stress? Because stress from tight deadlines is different from stress from conflict with colleagues.
Great point. For deadline stress, you might say, I'm up against a tight deadline, or the timeline is aggressive, or I'm racing against the clock.
For workload stress?
You can say, I have too much on my plate, or I'm juggling multiple projects, or the volume is unmanageable right now.
What about stress from lack of clarity or direction?
You can try phrases like, I'm not sure what's expected, or the goals keep changing, or I need more guidance, or the priorities aren't clear.
And stress from workplace relationships or conflict.
You might say, there's some tension on the team, or communication has been difficult, or collaboration isn't flowing smoothly, or personalities are clashing.
Those examples show that stress has many sources, and specific language helps you identify and communicate the real issue.
Let's talk about something really important. What do you say when your stress is affecting your health or personal life?
This is crucial because work stress often spills over into other areas of life. How do you communicate that?
You can say, work is affecting my sleep, or I'm bringing stress home, or my health is suffering, or I don't have energy for anything else.
And those statements are serious. They indicate that stress has crossed a line from normal to harmful.
Exactly. And if you're saying these things to a manager or HR, you're signaling that you need support or changes. It's not just venting, it's a call for action.
What about when someone asks, "Are you okay?" because they've noticed you seem stressed?
That question requires honesty, balanced with reassurance. You might say, I'm okay, just really busy, or I'm hanging in there, or honestly, I'm struggling a bit, or I'm managing, but it's been tough.
And most people will offer support or at least validation when you answer honestly. Saying "I'm fine" when you're clearly not fine doesn't help anyone.
Let's talk about something many people experience: imposter syndrome and work stress, the feeling that you're not good enough and that everyone will find out.
Imposter syndrome adds another layer to work stress. How do you talk about it?
You can say, I sometimes feel like I'm in over my head, or I worry I'm not qualified enough, or I feel like everyone else knows what they're doing except me, or I'm afraid of being exposed as a fraud.
Those are vulnerable admissions, but many people relate to them. Imposter syndrome is incredibly common, even among successful people.
And when you share it, often others will say, I feel that way too. It creates connection and reduces isolation.
Now let's talk about work-life balance, because stress often comes from the difficulty of balancing work and personal life.
Work-life balance is such a hot topic. You might hear, how is your work-life balance? How do you answer?
If it's good, you can say, "Pretty balanced, actually," or "I'm managing it well," or "I've gotten better at setting boundaries."
And if it's not good?
You can say, "Honestly, it's all work right now," or "Balance is really hard for me," or "I'm working on it," or "Work is taking over everything."
That last one is powerful because it acknowledges that work has become the dominant force in your life, which isn't healthy.
What about when people glorify overwork? You know, the I only slept 3 hours or I worked all weekend culture.
This is toxic but common in some workplaces. We call it hustle culture.
Hustle culture. Explain it.
Hustle culture is when overwork is celebrated and bragged about. People compete over who's busiest, who works the longest hours, who sacrifices the most. It treats burnout as a badge of honor rather than a problem.
And it creates pressure to participate. If everyone's working weekends, you feel like you should too.
Exactly. So how do you opt out without seeming lazy?
You set boundaries clearly. I don't work weekends, or I protect my personal time, or I prioritize rest so I can perform well, or I believe in sustainable work practices.
Those statements are firm but not judgmental. You're stating your boundaries without criticizing others.
Let's talk about stress relief and coping mechanisms. How do you discuss what you do to manage stress?
This is important because sharing coping strategies can help others. You might say, I go for walks during lunch, or exercise helps me manage stress, or I talk to a therapist, or I make sure to disconnect after work.
Those examples show healthy coping mechanisms, but some people cope in unhealthy ways too.
Right. Someone might say, I drink wine every night to relax, or I just push through and ignore it, or I comfort eat when I'm stressed. These admissions show struggle and might be cries for help.
And if a friend or colleague shares unhealthy coping mechanisms, you can gently suggest alternatives without being preachy.
Now, let's talk about something sensitive, crying at work. It happens, especially when stress builds up. How do you talk about it?
Crying at work is still somewhat taboo, especially in professional environments, but it's a human response to overwhelming stress.
If it happens to you, you might later say, I got emotional in a meeting, or I lost it for a moment, or the stress got to me, or I had a breakdown.
And most understanding people will respond with compassion. It happens, or don't worry about it, or we all have tough days.
What about when you need to take time off due to stress? How do you communicate that?
Taking mental health days is becoming more accepted, but it still requires careful language. You might say, I need a day to recharge, or I'm taking a mental health day, or I need some time to reset.
And with managers, you might say, I'm feeling burnt out and need to take some PTO, or I need a break to avoid complete exhaustion, or I'm requesting time off for my well-being.
Those phrases frame self-care as responsible rather than weak. You're preventing bigger problems by addressing stress early.
Let's talk about Sunday night anxiety. Many people feel dread about the work week starting. How do you describe that?
Sunday night anxiety is so common. You might say, I get the Sunday scaries, or I dread Monday mornings, or Sunday evenings are the worst, or I can't relax on Sundays because I'm thinking about work.
The term Sunday scaries is perfect because it captures that specific anxiety about the approaching work week.
And when you share this, many people will relate immediately. It's a bonding moment because it's such a universal experience among stressed workers.
What about when stress affects your performance? That's scary to admit.
It is scary because you worry about job security, but sometimes honesty is necessary. You might say to a manager, I'm struggling to keep up, or the stress is affecting my focus, or I need support to meet these expectations.
Those statements require courage, but they open doors to solutions. Maybe workload can be adjusted or resources can be provided.
Now let's talk about toxic work environments. Sometimes the workplace is the problem. How do you discuss that?
Toxic workplaces are serious, but talking about them requires care. You might say, the environment is really negative, or there's a lot of dysfunction here, or the culture is unhealthy, or this workplace is taking a toll on everyone.
And if you're talking to someone outside the company, you might be more direct. My workplace is toxic, or I work in a really unhealthy environment, or the company culture is damaging.
What about when people ask, why don't you just quit when you're complaining about work stress?
Oh, that's such a frustrating question. It's not always that simple. You might respond, it's complicated,
or I can't afford to quit right now, or I'm looking for other options, or I need the insurance, or I'm working on an exit strategy.
Those answers acknowledge that leaving a stressful job isn't always immediately possible, even when it's necessary.
Let's talk about comparing stress. Sometimes people compare whose job is more stressful. How do you handle that?
Stress comparison is tricky because everyone's experience is valid. If someone says, "You think your job is stressful? Try mine." You can respond, "Different jobs are stressful in different ways." Or, "I'm not comparing, I'm just sharing my experience."
That shuts down the competition while honoring both experiences. Stress isn't a contest.
What about when someone minimizes your stress? They say, "That's nothing," or "Just deal with it."
That's invalidating and hurtful. You can respond, "It might not seem like much to you, but it's affecting me." Or, "I need support, not dismissal." Or, "My experience is real, even if you don't understand it."
Those responses assert your right to feel stressed without being aggressive.
Now let's talk about positive aspects of work, because not everything's stress. How do you balance acknowledging stress with recognizing good things?
You can say, "Work is stressful, but I like my colleagues." Or, "It's demanding, but I'm learning a lot." Or, "The pressure is high, but the work is meaningful." Or, "I'm stressed, but I'm also grateful for my job."
That balance shows maturity and perspective. You're not just complaining, you're presenting a full picture.
What about when work stress is temporary, like during a busy season or a big project?
Temporary stress is easier to tolerate when you know it has an endpoint. You might say, "It's crazy right now, but it'll calm down soon." Or, "Just trying to get through this month." Or, "Once this project is done, it'll be better."
That hopeful framing helps you endure the stress because there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Let's talk about asking for help at work. That can be hard when you're stressed because you don't want to seem incapable.
Asking for help is a skill. You can say, "I could use some support with this," or "Can you help me prioritize?" Or, "I'm overwhelmed and need guidance," or "Do you have capacity to take on part of this?"
Those requests are specific and professional. You're not saying, "I can't do my job." You're saying, "I need collaboration to succeed."
Now I want to address something really important. What do you say when you're thinking about changing careers because of stress?
Career change due to stress is a huge decision. How do you talk about it?
You might say, "I'm reconsidering my career path," or "I'm not sure this field is sustainable for me," or "I'm exploring other options," or "I think I need a complete change."
Those statements are serious and show you're not just having a bad day, you're fundamentally questioning your career.
And people might respond with support or try to talk you out of it. How you frame it affects their response.
What about work stress in different industries? A teacher's stress is different from a nurse's stress, is different from a programmer's stress.
Absolutely. Different jobs have different stressors. Teachers might say, "The emotional labor is exhausting." Nurses might say, "I see too much suffering." Programmers might say, "The deadlines are relentless." The specifics matter.
But the underlying experience of being overwhelmed, exhausted, and burned out is universal across industries.
Let's talk about something many people face: the pressure to always be available, emails and messages outside work hours. How do you discuss that?
Always-on culture is exhausting. You might say, "I can't ever truly disconnect," or "I'm expected to respond immediately," or "There's no real off time," or "The boundaries between work and home are gone."
And you can set boundaries by saying, "I don't check email after 6 p.m., or "I'm unavailable on weekends," or "I need to disconnect to recharge."
Those boundaries might not always be respected, but stating them is the first step.
Now let's talk about something fun: stress relief activities. How do you talk about what you do outside work to decompress?
You might say, "I go hiking to clear my head," or "I cook to relax," or "I play video games to zone out," or "I meet friends to forget about work," or "I practice yoga to manage stress." These activities are important for mental health. and sharing them can inspire others to find their own stress relief.
What about when work stress affects your relationships? How do you discuss that with partners or family?
You need to be honest, like, I know I've been distracted lately, or work is consuming all my energy, or I'm sorry I've been irritable, or I need your patience right now.
Those acknowledgments show you're aware of the impact your stress has on others.
And your loved ones might respond with support, or they might express their own frustration. Both reactions are valid.
Let me ask you something personal, John. What's your honest experience with work stress?
Oh, that's a good question. I've definitely experienced burnout in past jobs. There were times when work consumed everything, and I lost sight of what mattered. I learned that no job is worth sacrificing your health or happiness. Now I'm much better at recognizing stress early and setting boundaries, but it's still a struggle sometimes.
I appreciate that honesty. What about you, Maya? For me, work stress comes in waves. Sometimes I handle everything well, and other times I feel completely overwhelmed by the same workload. I've learned that stress isn't just about how much you have to do, it's also about how supported you feel, how clear the expectations are, and how much control you have over your work.
That's such an important insight. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for asking.
And that's really what this episode is about. Finding the words to discuss something that affects millions of people every single day, whether you're thriving at work, barely surviving, or somewhere in between.
So we want to hear from you. Tell us in the comments, what's your work stress like? How do you cope? Use some of the phrases we discussed today. Share a story, share your strategy, share your honest feelings.
And don't worry about perfect grammar or perfect English. Just practice expressing your thoughts about work and stress. We'll read every comment and respond.
Because your experience matters. Whether you love your job but feel stressed sometimes, or you're counting down the days until you can quit, your feelings are valid and worth discussing.
If you found this conversation helpful and learned some new ways to talk about work stress, please give us a thumbs up.
And share this video with someone who's learning English, maybe someone who's stressed at work but struggles to express it. This might give them the language they need.
Subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss our next episode. We're going to keep exploring real communication, real culture, real life.
Until next time, stay nerdy, stay curious, and remember that it's okay to not be okay sometimes.
Take care of yourselves, everyone. Your well-being matters more than any job.
See ya!
Bye, everyone.